Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel, or welcome to the channel if this is your first time. I'm Bryce Edwards. I do these videos every so often to give everybody kind of an update on the market. I'm a very analytical driven guy, so I really like to get into the figures. It's a pretty boring video, let's be honest about it, but I like to break it down into three different segments. We'll talk about the general market, the luxury market, and the high rise market. All three act so differently when it comes to real estate here. So I break them down. So if you're only interested in one of those three, just skip to those ones. I'll have it all marked below. And I remade this video. I'm a little bit delayed getting this out because, in light of the fires going on in the Palisades and everything, I think that's going to have an impact on our market. I don't know how quickly, but I think a lot of those people, with how expensive those homes were, I think a lot of those people will be looking to move out of the area because rebuilding is going to just take so long, I imagine, there. So, without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start with the luxury segment, which isn't typical for my channel. I usually start in the general market, but the luxury segment was the most interesting to me last year because it showed the most amount of sales, and it was very interesting to see how they were spread out across the valley, I guess I should say. So, one of the stats here is we had 1,541 homes sold over $1 million last year, which is how I define the luxury market, by the way, is 1 million and over. And of those, 695 of those were cash transactions, which I just always find interesting. People aren't leveraging the money when it comes to making the purchase. I mean, we've had very high interest rates this whole year. So I think that's always a good stat to know. So 695 were cash transactions out of 1,541. And then I kind of wanted to jump into a little bit and see where we're seeing the most sales of these price ranges and go through those really quickly. So, Summerlin, where my office is, where we live, of those, 523 transactions happened here in Summerlin. One third of all the transactions over $1 million happened here in Summerlin, with the highest sale being $35 million in the Summit Club. So that's now the highest sale that's ever recorded here in Las Vegas. So it gives you kind of a barometer of what's going on over here. Southern Highlands was also very active, and it managed to get 85 transactions, with the highest price being 8.8 million down there. Let's move on. We'll do kind of like the little nook down in the southeast by Henderson. So we had Ascaya, McDonald Islands, and Seven Hills. Those contributed 174 sales out of those 1541, with $15 million being the highest down there. So Summit Club has really set the scene as far as luxury sales here in Vegas. We've typically, even though this won't show it this way, we've typically seen more of the luxury sales happen over there because there's much more elevation and everything. But Summit Club has really just changed it over here. The Ridges has become very hard to get into anymore. There's not a lot of inventory out there, and of the inventory that's there, it's now selling. I mean, there's like a Sterling Ridge or a Silver Ridge home. Sometimes they're selling in 30 days now, which is pretty crazy. So, and then the one outlier that I wanted to talk about that a lot of people don't consider is Lake Las Vegas. So that one's actually commanding a nice premium now over there. So 79 sales for the last year, with the highest sale being 5.8 million. Blue Heron's very active out there. They're building all of those spec homes. They're building a lot of customs out there you can buy on the lakefront. Very popular with California buyers in particular. When I talk to the new home sales people out there, they're saying a lot of their purchasers are from California. They're leaving the coast, and now they're able to get a slice of some lake by moving out there. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see how much those homes have appreciated out there, because it's so disconnected from a lot of things, but a lot of people like that about it too. Likely going into next year, I kind of want to make my prediction for this segment is I think activity is going to increase. I think we'll see, well, for number one, as soon as the election happened, we saw a number of sales over $5 million get knocked off right away. Within a week after the election, those were off the market. And I think a lot of people in this price range, they do not like uncertainty. So I think, love it or hate it, I think they just like to know where they think things are going. And then I think the mortgage rates will likely come down slightly this year, depending on what the tariffs do, stuff like that. There's so many macroeconomic things that could happen. But I do think it's going to be likely more active, especially with these fires that just happened in the Palisades. I think unfortunately, I think for those people, I think a lot of them will end up moving here. There's just so much red tape, even though I know they're trying to work something out for that. I think that area, I mean, maybe 5 years to rebuild, something like that. So very sad for a lot of those people that have been living there for decades. But yeah, I think fortunately and unfortunately, I think it will impact this market and it'll drive more sales in the coming year. So let's talk about the general market now. This is just essentially everything, including over a million. This is single family residential, Vegas, North Las Vegas, Henderson. That's what I narrow it down to for this. So across the board, we saw an increase in inventory. There were 1,300 more homes total listed at the time of me pulling the data than there were the year before. But that's still 2,000 homes lower than we were seeing in 2019. So there's still a very low supply of inventory compared to what a normal market is for us. But we are seeing that inch up a little bit. And I think that's because of interest rates staying high. 7% is where we've been hovering for I don't even know how long. We dipped down to 6.5 for a little bit, but 7%'s been pretty consistent when you average it out over months, I guess. And then I was also going to say on this, and I'm just reading off notes if anybody cares. So sales were very low for this market. Um, will likely either tie or will maybe slightly pass sales for 2023. The sales were just historically low, two of the worst back-to-back years we've ever seen. So very historically low sales. There were so many people that bought during 2021 with interest rates being so low. I think I saw a stat where it's like 80% of people have an interest rate below 5%. So not a lot of people are going to give up a 5% to get into a 7 or 7.5% interest rate. Um, Even though we had those low number of sales, it's very important to understand we still had a lot of appreciation over the last year. For my numbers, it was 6.7% year over year, even with the climbing inventory. So there's still a lot of upward pressure on that, and we'll likely still continue to see that because all the new homes that are being built on very small lots. They're being built smaller to keep the prices lower. So we're seeing the resale market have to take that up, and the new homes are rising prices. So it's just all those factors at play at once are contributing to the appreciation, even though sales are so low. And then as of the numbers that I pulled at the end of the year, we were just $2,000 shy of the highest median sales price that we've ever recorded here. So we're right around that 450-ish number across those three areas that I said. According to LVR, they found that 25% of all sales were cash. So even though we did have some investor activity, not a ton. A lot of this can be attributed to people moving from other states that were able to sell their home, take the equity, and just buy something without a mortgage. So a lot of that can be this way. Another one I wanted to really talk about is distressed sales. So I get calls all the time where people are like, "Oh, I'm looking to pick up a short sale, a foreclosure." There's not a lot of them. Distressed sales account for less than 1% of all the listings last year. So, I mean, out of the what did I say the number was? I didn't put it on here. So I think it was, so we had 1,300 less homes available when I pulled the number. Less than 1% of those, so 130, are distressed sales in some way, shape, or form. Real quick, I forgot to mention during this video, if any of this is of interest to you, if you would like to discuss your particular needs, all my information is below. So here's what I'd recommend when it comes to just a general market if you are shopping for a sale, because that's what a lot of people are looking for when they call me for a short sale foreclosure. Is really it's more about just finding something that's on the market and making an offer that you're comfortable with. Last year, my number was, I have it on a sticky note somewhere, but it was about $62,000 was my average I was able to negotiate off homes last year. That includes incentives on new homes. That includes just a simple price reduction, closing costs, all that stuff. So there's a lot of negotiability out there. A lot of agents honestly don't even try to negotiate much. I mean, I think the number as far as the list price to sales price ratio is somewhere around 98%, whereas some of these sales, 8% off is what I was able to get some of my clients. So there's deals to be had out there. You've got to just attempt them, and you've got to be willing to put in the offers. But more importantly to me, especially if you're buying the single family housing market for yourself, is buy something that you're okay with long term. Don't buy something that's the best deal just because it's the best deal. It doesn't make any logical sense to me that you would buy a home for $20,000 less that you don't like because you think it's a better deal than something you really love that might be $100 more for a payment or something like that, for example. So Basically, this market is impacted the most by interest rates, so that's why we saw just historically low numbers in this segment. Last section, let's talk about the high rise market. So this market's always interesting because there's not really that many high rise buildings, and there's not really that many agents that really specialize in it either. So last year, 665 sales, and astoundingly to maybe some of you, is 415 of those were all cash. This market is heavily influenced by cash. It's because a lot of the buildings are pretty hard to get loans in. If you don't know the right lenders, it's very hard to get financing, especially if you're wanting to do like a Airbnb, or if you're buying in like the Waldorf that we just closed one in. You have to have a certain lender that can do something like that, because when you're sharing amenities with hotel guests, it really impacts which banks are willing to lend to you. You can't just sell it to Fannie and Freddie. So, not something you really need to know about, but it's just of interest that so many of these sales happen in cash, and you really have to just know the right people to be able to finance it. So let's talk about the top selling places, because this is always of interest to people. So of those 665 sales, we had 58 in Palms Place, which is an Airbnb approved place. We had 99 in Signature, which every year leads the numbers because you can Airbnb it. Great location. It's going to be right by the new baseball stadium, assuming that gets done. And you're just right there by everything, really. So that area is always popular. We had Trump Tower with 65 sales, another Airbnb place. And then as far as the luxury towers, the breakdowns for last year, we had 20 at Waldorf Astoria. We had two of them, or maybe it was three, over $9 million or over $8 million, somewhere in there. But basically, some that were setting records in the building. So we had 20 in Waldorf Astoria, 38 in Veer, which is not surprising because there's so many more units at Veer. Turnberry Place at 56, and then Queensridge only had 18. So nothing really shocking there. I was maybe a little bit surprised at the number in Waldorf because there's only 225 units there, so 10% of everything turned over essentially. That one's been a very interesting building because it's just so hot and cold with what sells and what doesn't. It just really depends on the floor plan. So all in all, high rise market still healthy. We've yet to see what impact the um, the new towers such as Cello and the Four Seasons residences in McDonald Highlands will have. But as of right now, Waldorf seems to be the place that a lot of people want to be when it comes to the luxury places, unless they want something like a Turnberry Place or a Queensridge, which I find similar, and unless they're looking for something that's more like a home in the sky, because the Waldorf does feel a little bit more like a a normal condo, whereas the Turnberry Place in Queensridge feels more like a normal house with full size appliances. Everything is such as that. Just one more time, wanted to remind you all the information is below if you're interested in figuring out how all this data can impact your home buying. Let's quickly talk about a bonus segment. Let's talk about new home sales. So, we're still seeing a lot of incentives in this area. I was able to have one client this year, or I guess technically last year now. He was able to close, get all of his closing costs paid for, and still had a little bit of money left over to buy down rate. So we're seeing a lot of incentives. It really depends on the exact community because some of them are able to pre-sell without even having the lots graded, whereas other ones have existing inventory and they're having trouble selling those. So it really just depends on the area, where you want to be, what incentive you're looking for. Over here in Summerlin, it really just depends on the exact little area that you're looking at, if they have a great incentive or no incentive at all. I'm finding most everything has a little bit of an incentive right now. The only other thing I'll say about this segment is if you are considering a particular community, reach out to me first, because a lot of the times I get emails of like exclusive discounts where, like, if somebody transacts before the end of a certain month or before the end of a certain fiscal quarter, that there's certain incentives for me to bring people in there, like better rate buy downs, better stuff like that, that they're not always or mostly going to advertise online because they'd rather keep their bottom line as good as possible. So they're not going to tell you about that. They're going to try to get people to come in there unprovoked by an incentive and see if they can sell it their own. But they do send me a lot of these emails. So it's worth reaching out, I guess, before you go to a place like that. So as I said at the beginning of the video, very boring video. I'm very aware of it. It's not really a fun video to make, but if you're watching this video, you're actually interested in this sort of stuff. You're actually wanting to know where the market's going or what it's already been doing. So the bottom line, if I could sum it up really quickly, is we've seen appreciation, even though home sales have been very low. Mortgage rates continue to be high, but next year we'll probably see more sales and we'll also see the same appreciation. So if you can afford the payment, it might be worthwhile seeing if you should buy now if you can find the right home instead of waiting until mortgage rates go back down and then everybody's going to be a free for all and we're going to have people waiting in the front yard to buy places again. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. If you're interested in your particular situation, if you're considering a certain community, I've always got all my information below. Just feel free to reach out to me. It's easiest to email me because I get back to those so quickly. If I'm with a client, I don't answer my phone. So, yeah, hopefully you found this valuable. Like I said, very boring, but thank you for watching if you made it this far, and we'll see you in the next one.